turns out that this ESS60 molecule can fit into one of the protein pockets of the AIDS virus. So this is back in the 90s. AIDS was certainly at its peak, and this would actually stop the replication of the AIDS virus. Our product addresses inflammation related to exercise-induced inflammation. Right, so we've all had a tough workout or maybe just walked longer or farther than we normally do, woke up that next day and felt that inflammation in our body. We absolutely address that. I have a business coach. He says about the product is, for 50 years, I needed an alarm clock to wake up. As soon as I started taking my Vital C, I started waking up before the alarm clock and fresh and ready to go. So
what can a person immediately expect, and short-term and long-term, with this molecule being ingested on a daily basis?
Well, there's two pieces to that. So one is,
so I am here with Chris Burres, and Chris is the leader. He's the most advanced guy on the earth when it comes to carbon molecules and what we'll call ESS60. That's the name of his brand. And he's the originator. Like, really, Chris, you're the inventor. We'll get you to tell your story in a sec. But from the moment I met you, I knew that I was talking to the right guy when it came to this particular subject. And so if you could give us a quick snapshot of who you are right like today in your business, in your mission, and then how did you get there? Like, what happened to stimulate all this activity in your life, and what's your vision for the future? And then we'll get into all the questions around the logistical and technical and scientific side of the molecule.
Yeah. So first, it's so great to connect with you. I think this was in the works when we were at that mastermind in Seattle, and now you've got the podcast, you've got episodes out, you've got great guests out, and now you've decided to have me, which I certainly appreciate. So this is really exciting. I think it's always best to start way back in the beginning, and in this case, it's the discovery of this molecule. So I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you're listening, just imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. This molecule was discovered in 1985 here in Houston at Rice University, and that's where we're based. We're also based in Houston. And the three scientists who discovered that molecule won the Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1996. So short 11 years from discovery to actually getting awarded the Nobel Prize. My company, my business partner and I started the company in 1991, so we're the oldest and longest manufacturers of this molecule. And like you said, we call this ESS60. Now, the molecule's absolutely amazing. I know you and I could geek out just about what this molecule does, not even in the health space, right? So the way I describe it, it performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. It makes better inks, better tires, better batteries, better photocells. And this is often where people are like, wait, this is a health podcast. You just said inks, batteries, tires, photocells. I've never woken up and looked at my car and gone, I wonder what in my car battery I should be consuming on a daily basis. And the story actually gets a little worse first. One of the shapes on the exterior of the soccer ball shaped molecule is reminiscent of benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society, right? If you just look around and imagine everything that's plastic gone because the foundational molecule of plastics is benzene. A lot of medications, including maybe one of the most famous is aspirin, has a base molecule of benzene. A lot of detergents. We literally don't have modern society without benzene. But benzene on its own is known to be toxic and known to be a carcinogen. And so because that shape is on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule, they thought it would be toxic. They put it in a toxicity study. And instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group. Now that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, and it's peer-reviewed, published research. And when that paper came out, that paper came out in about mid-2012. That was a publication that kind of changed my business partner and I, changed the trajectory, right? It took us a while to really kind of acquiesce and get into the supplement space. But it changed our trajectory from being, what I call happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists and into moving into the health space. And since then, I've done a number of things. I had a longevity summit. I wrote a book, Live Longer and Better. I started my podcast as well, which we need to get you on. And so my life is very different from the moment that has that publication came out. That's kind of the broad background of the molecule and how I ended up here.
Yeah, cool. So now the carbon molecule itself, what amount of the body is carbon? What amount is silica? Do you know the ratios between the two, like all the elemental stuff that are structural to us?
Yeah, I know that we're significantly carbon. I mean, they call us carbon beings. I'm not sure silica. I know that there are some theories that silica could have been another base. So we're carbon-based beings, and there is a potentially the chemistry is available for us to be a silicon-based entity. But yeah, carbon is the foundational. If you think about chemistry, right? And you think about organic chemistry just means chemistry based on carbon, and everything that works in us is carbon based.
Okay, now is this an energy or a structural, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, and so certainly structural, right? In fact, that's why they won the Nobel Prize. So this is the first closed cage molecule that was ever discovered. They've since discovered additional closed cage molecules. And by closed cage, I mean most molecules that exist actually have dangling ends, right? There's something potentially to attach to, or maybe they're complete, and so there's nothing that could attach to it, but the space is there. This actually has every molecule in the molecule is attached on front and back to another molecule. And it actually is part of the reason that they won the Nobel Prize for that discovery. It turns out there's a new symbol in chemistry because of this molecule. So we're all familiar with the @ symbol. You got the @ in your email. Prior to the discovery of this molecule, that did not exist in chemistry. Now it exists in chemistry. So if you see something that says lanthanum at C60, right, because there's 60 carbon atoms in this, if you see that, what it means is lanthanum physically trapped inside of this ESS60 molecule, not covalently bonded, not ionically bonded with the exterior, but physically trapped. Now, one of the first medical, so my business partner and I have been doing this from the very beginning. We actually were manufacturing the molecule 5 years before they won the Nobel Prize. And one of the things that was true early on, they were thinking about medical applications, and they were thinking pretty kind of out of the box medical applications. One thing that was kind of more standardized is it turns out that this ESS60 molecule can fit into one of the protein pockets of the AIDS virus. So this is back in the 90s. AIDS was certainly at its peak, and this would actually stop the replication of the AIDS virus. So there are patents related to the ESS60 molecule interfering with the replication of the AIDS virus. The kind of more cutting edge thing was, what if we could put an atomic, a radioactive atom on the inside of this? And that's not easy, but it can be done. And then most of the wet chemistry that works for the benzene ring also works on the exterior of this ESS60 cage. So you could attach things that would cause them to attach to, say, cancer cells. And now you could deliver a radioactive payload to a cancer cell. Now, that is still theoretical. It's certainly theoretically possible, but it's extremely hard. Those are called endofullerenes when you actually have something trapped inside of that cage. Very hard to make, and so therefore very expensive. And then you got to do the wet chemistry on top of that to get it to attach to cancer. But this molecule, so here's some fascinating things about the molecule. You can fire this molecule at 15,000 miles an hour at a plate of steel, where most molecules will just shred apart. This one, and I always picture it, will just kind of compress and bounce right back. It has 6-fold symmetry. So there's 6 planes through this molecule through which it's symmetrical, which gives it incredible resilience. So it's it's a molecule that is going to be ubiquitous. And that's really why they did that toxicity study. They thought men would be working with this on a regular basis by now. And so they needed to understand the toxicity, the quote unquote toxicity. And again, that just turned into the longest longevity experimental result on mammals ever.
Right. So the toxicity level is not a concern. It's the health benefit level. So what are the mechanical and dynamic actions of C60 going into the body, the ESS60 particularly?
Yeah.
You created a purified version of this that is the maximum efficacy from anything I've seen. And you also have in suspension and a very, good delivery system. What can a person immediately expect, and short-term and long-term, with this molecule being ingested on a daily basis?
Man, so one of the things that, okay, so we're happy-go-lucky. Actually, let me kind of continue our path, because there's some interesting nuances and pieces, and then we'll get into this method of action. So this paper comes out in 2012. Mid-2013, we start getting phone calls, and people are saying, hey, how much of this should we consume? And we're, super conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. And we're in our head, what we were hearing was, hey, that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world, which we still do to this day, that stuff that's used in inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much should I be consuming on a daily basis? And our conservative mindset was like, well, I think you should be consuming like zero, like none. And we actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid-2013. To be very clear, the literature was clear that this molecule was safe. We were just ultra conservative scientists in that mode. And then about every quarter, well, at that point, we started getting 2 to 3 calls a week, and we would get these amazing phone calls like, hey, my knee pain is gone. And this was back when I was answering the phone, and I was like, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And they're like, yeah. If my rat weighs 275 pounds, how much should my rat be taking on a daily basis? So we kind of know what's going on. My business partner and I are getting together on a quarterly basis. Like, do we want to get into the supplement market? And you're in the supplement market. There's challenges in the supplement market. You're going up against competitors who don't have the ethics that you have. And so that's frustrating. There's all sorts of things that are wrong in the industry in so many cases. My business partner are like, we just don't want to be in this industry, right? The difference between delivering, when you have a handful of it, it's a black powder. The difference between delivering this black powder to researchers who, when they get it, they'll give it to a research assistant, they'll give it to a research, a grad student to actually test and make sure we ship them what we promised them. That is not what's happening in the supplement market, right? So we're like, we just don't want to get into this industry. This process went on until about the latter part of 2017. In the middle of that process, I found a peer-reviewed published research paper that said 50% of the supplements that those researchers had purchased on the market did not have in them what they said they had in them. Again, this is like another, we probably don't want to get into this market. And then finally, in the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following starts talking about all the benefits he's getting taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from ringing 2 to 3 times a week to 10 times a day. So now my business partner are like, okay, this is a bigger entrepreneurial opportunity than we realize. We also thought, hey, if what happens to this industry is, it happens that's typical to the supplement industry, then you're going to get a bunch of kind of low quality, lack of integrity products on the market. And we're in a unique position with the lab, having worked with the molecule now for 33 plus years. We're in a unique position to actually deliver a high quality product. We asked ourselves 2 questions. The first question was a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team takes it. So absolutely, by the way, it's not a requirement to work here. You don't have to take the product to work here. And then the other one is the FTC. You're obviously familiar with that. The FTC and the FDA. You got to dot the I's, you got to cross the T's. And so it was in 2018 that we really started bringing this to market. Now, to get to your question about what was the mechanism of action. As we start coming into market, one of my roles as the chief scientist is what's going on? What is the method of action? Our most consistent testimonial is that people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. Now, this is a very unique collection of responses to one particular supplement, right? To have focus and energy and then also impact sleep later that night. Like I'm not aware of many things. You have much more experience than me. There's probably some things on the market that do that, but they're not many. I'm certainly aware that if you exercise in the morning, that'll positively impact your sleep. If you get exposure to the sun and get your circadian rhythm in line with the rising and falling of the sun, that'll have a positive impact on your sleep. But that's a unique mechanism or a unique set of reactions. If the only thing we did was improve sleep, right? Sleep is good for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. That could explain it. So that was like the first place that I landed. The next is to think about a 90% extension of life. If you kind of query the medical community, a lot of people believe that aging is an oxidation and an inflammation process, right? So we have the phrase inflammaging because inflammation has such a deleterious effect on our health. There's peer-reviewed and published research that shows us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So we can absolutely check the box of antioxidant. And then when it comes to inflammation, you have to be really careful with the FDA. The FDA equates inflammation to the diseases of chronic inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. So that's if you say I address inflammation, you are actually saying I address cardiovascular disease, I address Alzheimer's, I address arthritis, I address cancers, and obviously you got to do a lot more research in order to be able to address those. What we can say is that our product addresses inflammation related to exercise-induced inflammation. Right. So we've all had a tough workout or maybe just walked longer, farther than we normally do, woke up that next day and felt that inflammation in our body. We absolutely address that. And I kind of wrap up this piece with we fit perfectly in with an anti-inflammatory diet, right? That's a diet associated with the blue zone people. It's the people in the blue zones tend to have reduced incidences of stroke, reduced incidences of heart attack, and tend to actually live longer. And then we've got a newer theory, but I've been talking a whole long time. You probably have some questions or maybe some guidance here.
Yeah, well, it comes down to the carbon question. So I noticed in my life, there are good carbons and very bad carbons. Would be a great example is carbon monoxide, for example, whereas carbon dioxide is amazing because it releases and goes, and carbon monoxide traps in the cell. I don't eat carbohydrates. I stopped altogether with carbohydrates. And that was one of the biggest upgrades because the carbohydrates is turning into the wrong kind of carbon that builds up in your system. So this is the right kind. And it's like everything. You don't want to have the wrong kind of iron. You want to have the right kind. You don't want to have all these different things. So the ESS60 molecule that's going in, is that able to address the wrong carbons and help the body get it out? Is there a detoxification system involved in this thing as well?
We think that there is a detoxification aspect of it. And we just have this, a couple of things, and we'll get into kind of the latest theory, the boss theory. We've done some research with the University of Houston. We're here in Houston, where the byproduct material we provided to them, which is created in the process of manufacturing the ESS60 molecule, they determined that it performed as well as activated charcoal, right? And we're familiar with activated charcoal as something that can help detoxify. The thing about activated charcoal is they're pretty big particles and they don't get across the gut barrier. Right. So it's interesting. A lot of people talk about detoxification of your system, but if you're taking activated charcoal, all you're really doing is removing the toxins from your stomach and colon tract. You're actually not removing things from your body unless your body's actually moving them into your stomach or your colon, right? Like that's the only real way that happens. With the ESS60 molecule, we do know that it gets into your bloodstream. We actually know that it gets into your brain, it crosses the blood-brain barrier because it's such a small molecule. We actually know from peer-reviewed published research that it gets into the mitochondria, right? So you combine this capability of holding on to potentially toxins and its ability to get to places where a lot of detoxifiers typically don't go.
Yeah, really cool. Now, what's the nanometer size of your ESS 60?
It's 10 angstroms across. So you think about it, it's 60 carbon atoms in the shape of a soccer ball, and the whole length across is 10 angstroms across. So it's an incredibly tiny molecule. And what's interesting, I mentioned the black powder that we would sell to researchers. You can buy that black powder from us. You can buy, raw ESS 60. You can actually consume raw ESS 60. There's nothing toxic about it. But it's not water soluble. It turns out that it's only oil soluble. And so you would just basically excrete all of that. Some small amount would get absorbed. And we'll talk about when you dissolve it in olive oil, we'll finish it. When you dissolve it in olive oil or avocado oil or MCT oil, it actually gets down to the monomolecular layer. So we have a really kind of incredible stat. This molecule is so small that one drop of our olive oil product has more than 400 times as many of these molecules in it as you have cells in your body. Right? So one drop has 400 times as many of this ESS 60 molecule than you have cells in your body. That's how small it is. And so that's, again, that's why we know it can get into each piece. And there's actually peer-reviewed published research that proves that it's in the mitochondria, which is kind of the genesis, one of the key aspects of our boss theory as it relates to the ESS 60 molecule.
Okay, so to give the audience a ratio where they can think about this on a size basis. So you have macro that you can see with the eye, micro that takes a microscope, nano's 1,000 times smaller than micro, pico's 1,000 times smaller than nano. Then you have your Dalton molecules, you've got angstrom. So where does the angstrom fit into that ratio-wise?
Yeah, it's way down at the bottom. It is like you just don't really have a concept of how small this molecule is, right? It is only 60 carbon atoms. If you think about what we can see, we'll call it with the human eye, but it's augmented. You have to use a tunneling electron microscope. And you can barely see atoms at that level. Like this is the highest magnification that you can possibly make. It is so small that at one point IBM took individual silica atoms and put them in the shape of IBM. And I think that was published in Nature. It was such a big scientific accomplishment to be able to manipulate these molecules. This is on that scale.
Okay. So when you suspend it in oil and you say it's actually soluble, it disappears visibly into the black powder, and then you consume it. Is the delivery system, it has to be the fat to deliver this properly to the cell?
Well, our current theory is it doesn't necessarily have to be a fat per se. It's just that in order to dissolve it and get it to the individual molecule level, right? So that each individual molecule is floating around all by itself. In order to do that, you have to dissolve it in an oil, and then that makes your body able to uptake it significantly better, as opposed, again, to taking that powder where if you think about that powder, think about like a sugar crystal or a salt crystal. The difference between having an individual salt atom or a salt crystal, it's just, orders and orders of magnitude different, and you're going to have significantly higher uptake. There's a whole industry right now of taking things that we work with regularly and turning them into nano, because it actually it changes the way that our bodies interact with them, because they're so readily bioavailable once you get to the nano scale, to the individual molecular scale.
Right. Now, these carbon molecules, are they attaching to things in your body as well, or are they, what's the functionality there?
We currently have what's called the BOSS theory, right? Buffering oxidative stress system. So again, from peer-reviewed published research, we know that it gets into the mitochondria. From way back in the 90s, we know that this soccer ball-shaped ESS 60 molecule can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of its cage. So current theory is It's in the mitochondria. Well, let's do a little bit of kind of background. Mitochondria, your audience, I know you know this, your audience probably knows this, but so I'll keep it really short. Mitochondria, the powerhouse of every cell. Every cell in your body has between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria, except for blood cells, which have 0, and brain and nerve cells, which have 2 million. That's how much energy our nervous system uses in order to do its job. Just like any powerhouse that we're familiar with, there's a negative byproduct, right? So your car going down the road has exhaust. Your power plant has a smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, it's producing reactive oxygen species. The way the mitochondria manages those reactive oxygen species, and those are negatively charged particles, is with glutathione and melatonin, right? Interesting here, melatonin is known to be the sleep hormone. I mentioned that our most consistent testimonial is related to sleep, right? Includes sleep. So when a mitochondria, we also have this concept that different cells, different mitochondria in our body can get overstressed. And when they do, that's when a reactive oxygen species is not managed by glutathione or melatonin, and it runs around, and the way I describe it is like a little bumper car running around doing damage on everything that it bumps into, right?
Right.
We know that this ESS60 molecule is present. We know it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles. So we believe it's actually holding on to those reactive oxygen species so they can't do any damage until the mitochondria can replenish the glutathione or the melatonin. And I have a kind of a fun analogy. It's the end of Mardi Gras and you're on Bourbon Street and you've got these drunk reactive oxygen species running around, smashing cars, messing up the place. And the New Orleans police, the glutathione and melatonin, come in and handcuff themselves to these reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they get overwhelmed in that situation? They take these and they throw them in a paddy wagon. This ESS60 molecule acts like a paddy wagon, holding on to those reactive oxygen species so they can't run around and do the damage. And then when that glutathione and melatonin, the New Orleans Police Department, replenish the glutathione and melatonin, they then come and handcuff them onto those particles that are attached to the ESS60 molecule and then get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that the ESS60 molecule is the boss.
Right. So the way, in simple terms, we consume food, we turn that into energy. It's either clean food, concentrated rich food, or dirty food, and all these different types of foods cause different exhaust, right? Which is the reactive oxygen species, which is really burning our body to the ground, so to speak. It's harming us. And if we don't deal with that population and get that out, then we have an ongoing accumulation of this crap in our system. So this is going to go in there and help us squirt this stuff out. Is it going to leave in urine and bowels, or is it going to go through sweat or breath, or how does it get out?
Well, there's two pieces to that. So one is it's just acting as that buffer, right? So it's just holding on to those reactive oxygen species, and then your body's natural function, when it can catch up, manages them appropriately. The question, I'll interpret the question as, how long does the ESS60 molecule stay in your system? There's some research to suggest it's about 10 days. There's also a number of testimonials. So I have a business coach. My business coach, what he says about the product is, for 50 years, I needed an alarm clock to wake up. As soon as I started taking my Vital C, I started waking up before the alarm clock and fresh and ready to go. So he's a business coach. He's got to do networking for his own business. And so he'll be out and have drinks or have a late night or whatever. Even when he doesn't get as much sleep as he's supposed to, he wakes up before the alarm clock and then is refreshed for the day. Now, if he doesn't have the product and he hasn't been on the product for 10 days, he'll readily share, I start to need the alarm clock again. So that kind of fits in with the data that suggests it's about 10 days. And then our testimonials also suggest it's about 10 days. And,
right.
And you excrete it.
Right. So the half-life is quite long. I mean, it's not like 72 hours. It's like days. Have you done any half-life testing on this?
We haven't done any half-life testing. I mean, the molecule is so small, it's really tough to actually do that kind of testing, right? So you're trying to do a blood draw of a molecule that's actually not water soluble, right? So what does that look like? It's a really challenging process.
Now, does this substance build up in the tissue like a bank account where you can use it? You say do it for a period of time. And like you said, your friend, your business consultant, was noticing a change if he didn't consume it, kind of back to his normal pattern. So it sounds like it's going into the bloodstream, but getting into the cellular matrix and going through really the whole body. The evidence is the size of it's going to permeate everything. It's not going to have any barrier that it can't get through. And so there's no significant issue with it building up in the body really over and above what you really need. And your body's going to constantly use it to excrete the ROS, right?
Yeah, so that is our understanding, right? Yeah, that it comes into play. Now, you have to have a little bit of a caveat here, right? We'll go back to that original research. So when it was published in 2012, it's out of the University of Paris. I'm actually really proud. The lead researcher in that paper, we've published with him, and we're in the process of publishing another paper. So you're familiar, a lot of supplement companies aren't doing additional research, aren't doing publications. We are. Like, this is just such a cutting edge molecule. The responsible party has to be doing this. Like, that we just feel an obligation to. It's expensive, like, you know how expensive testing is and all of that. So we are going down that path. So in that original study, the rats weren't given. So one of the questions people have is like, hey, I'm older, like you and I. Is it too late for me? Is there no, am I not going to get any benefit? They never gave any doses to the rats until they were 10 months old, right? So these are basically full-grown rats at the time that they got their first dose. And then they only dosed those rats for 7 months. So their last dose was given at month 17. And then, despite the last dose being given on month 17, the typical, so I'll share this, a typical Wistar rat lives 32 months. Our MyVital C rats lived out to 62 months, even though their last dose was in 17. So at 17 months. So despite the evidence that we're clearing it in 10 days, despite the testimonials that we're clearing it in 10 days, there may be some ongoing that particular study indicates that there are some ongoing positive results, in the system.
Right. So one of the things I've always been, open to being led to, because you really can't find things. You could have an intention to go find something, but to find these, what I call master keys, which is what you have to be led to them. And it's kind of like going up the rungs of a ladder. You're going to get eventually on one of the rungs, you're going to find out about these things. And it's on the way up to allow the body to simply live a lot longer based upon getting healthier every day. Because everyone traditionally, without these things, without master keys, they get a little bit less healthy every single day into the future until they eventually die of, hypoxia, or they're all plugged up, or they're inflamed, or they're congested, or whatever it is. They get diseases and all this crap. So this is, to me, something of a significant importance, where you're going to be putting something in your system that's going to support the body's ability to now heal itself. So, if I didn't learn about this till I was 80, I'm giving my body a fighting chance by supporting it in its natural function to heal itself, to get it back to its original blueprint, to get that cellular functionality back up to a healthy state where the cell lives longer. The telomeres are extended, and therefore our body continues to live. But the most important part is having a higher quality of life as we get older, because the last thing we want is to be here longer and longer and longer, and then suffer more and more as we see the traditional situation. So this is so new that there hasn't been any real human ability, because people haven't been doing this for long enough. But in a rat's life, so the average lifespan of a rat, you were saying, what's the average lifespan?
So in the case of a Wistar rat, which is a very specific research rat, and actually I'll tell this, and I'll also tell another fascinating piece of the study. A typical Wistar rat lives out 32 months, and they actually have a known amount of tumor mass in their body. The longer they live, the more tumor mass they have in their body. Even though the MyVital C rats lived out to 62 months, so 90% longer, none of them had any tumors, right? And so when I share that, one of the things that people say, oh, it's a cure for cancer. And my answer to that is no. And then I follow that with a no. Like, dealing with a cancer that has metastasized is very different than being a cancer preventative. We know things as simple as good diet, good nutrition, good sleep are cancer preventatives. And this throws the ESS60 molecule into that category. A lot more research to be done. So yeah, typical Wistar rat, 32 months, and then the MyVital C rats out to 62 months.
And that's only adding one thing. I mean, there's so many things that we've learned about that we can add in now that allow the body to function at a much higher level. We really don't know how long the human body could actually live given all these master keys. Because over the last 20 years, one of the disappointing things that I kept running into was the people who had done lifetimes of research who actually had a master key, whether it was for brain health or endocrine system or whatever it was. And they would get old and they would die at the regular age of 75 to 85. And I'm like, did that person just die? Seriously? They're in the health space. They're researchers. They've discovered something profound that they've put massive amount of energy and research into their life, and they just died. And it really messed me up. I'm like, okay. So then I realized that they'd been so attached to their single master key that when I was sharing other master keys I'd been led to with them, they weren't open. They're like, no, you don't need that. This is all you need over here. But then they died. So to me, it's the combination of all the master keys. And to define a master key, it's like you have thousands of these keys down here in the pharmaceutical world, in the nutraceutical world, the supplement world, whatever. And they're dealing with remedies, a remedy of a symptom. You take this, the symptom goes away. But it never removes the problem. And the problem is still there, but it's suppressed. This removes the problem. When you have a master key, it removes the problem completely in that area. You no longer need remedies. You're hitting it at the very highest level. It's like anything you see in life. If you're going to learn to do something like, say, play the piano, you want to find the top piano teacher in the world. You want to be led to them. You want to have the very best piano, right? Steinway. Yeah. And you're going to learn the fastest and become the best piano player in that environment. So we're health practitioners. We're self-care practitioners. And we're sharing what we learned with our physical bodies with the world so that each person can become self-aware and self-care, having these master keys combined, which is our job to gather them. I'm out there because you're a major researcher. You have spent 30 plus years doing this. And I don't have time or energy or funding to do that research. I only had, we generated around 35 million of profit, which is a very small amount of money. People think that's a lot. No, it's a very small amount when you're into research. But I didn't have to become the researcher. I simply researched the researchers, asking verbally out loud to be led to people like yourself. And just slowly but surely, that leading happened. And it's like being on a grid, where once you're on a grid, you're going to be eventually connected to everybody on that grid because everybody's feeding into the same grid. So I'm very thankful to have connected with you. And it was, it just had to happen at the right time at the right place. The most important thing is, though, is me engaging with that very specific molecule that you've defined what is not toxic, is extremely beneficial to the body. There's all the testing in the rat world that indicates that a human being, a biological organism like ourselves, is going to be able to thrive much longer, just adding this one thing in, let alone putting all the other pieces together. So getting the amount of time, energy, effort, and money that a person has to invest in themselves is diminished significantly when you get the right thing, because it goes good, great, greater, greatest up here. And when people started I started listening to people talking about, the carbon, the buckyballs, and the C60 is what they were calling it at the time, carbon molecule. And I was like, then I was hearing that some of the products were very toxic. They weren't made properly. They were not careful enough. They were just trying to jump on a bandwagon to make a bunch of money off of a new trend. When you're sitting there, forget no trend, very, very careful. No, don't take it internally until we can quantify and qualify this. And then you get it out there. And then all of a sudden, people who are on the ESS 60 get a profound result because you've actually tapped into the greatest level of it, the most pure, most beneficial, most efficacious form of this. And the only way that you, the listener, can determine whether this is just another sales pitch, right, where we're trying to promote your product and then make commission on it, or something that's very like shallow, right? No, all we're doing is we're giving you data that you can sell yourself on it. If we're here to sell you, somebody else can unsell you. You're here to gather the data, make your own determination, feel your gut, like you mentioned earlier, your intuition, Chris. All of us get better intuition all the time as we clean out our systems because it gives our signal-to-noise ratio a cleaner signal. And you got a very clean signal. All the noise and confusion is eliminated. You're delivering the most definitive form of this in the material world, allowing the body to then have a better mitochondrial engine, less stuff in the way, cleaning the system out, getting rid of the ROS and having all that inflammatory stuff and congestive things dealt with. And so combining this in, the way you're going to learn that this is true, what Chris is talking about, and that I'm very interested in educating people about this, is consuming it. Because until you do that, your body can't know. You really can't even speak to it until you yourself consume it. And then you can start to learn from your body's experience, what is it going to do for you? And what kind of, so for people to connect with you, Chris, to get this, where's the best place for them to go? What kind of guarantee do you have on, if a person doesn't think it's very interesting and they don't think it did anything for them, what's the guarantee?
Well, I mean, here's the reality. I mean, if somebody's not happy on the product, then we'll refund their money. Like that is really, I think you are very similar. Like that's just the right way to do it.
Yes.
We actually have a link for your particular audience. It's myvitalc.com, YTY, younger than yesterday. So myvitalc as in carbon.com/YTY. We actually have a coupon code on that page that they can find. It's gets them $15 off of their initial order. And I do want to share all of this if people kind of want to dig in a little bit deeper. I wrote a book, Live Longer and Better. This is the story of the discovery of the molecule, how the molecule ended up in the health space, my journey with it, my doubts and concerns. If it's not clear from the way I told the story today, I really didn't want to be in the supplement space. I really didn't think, if you had asked me 8 years ago, was I going to be here? Was I going to be on a podcast with this cool guy named Ian? Was I, going to have written a book and done a longevity summit? My answer just would have been no, because I didn't see a path from where I was to where I am now. This is just, I think, as you said, it just sought me out, and I've been following the path that makes the most sense. And so, yeah, people can try it when they go there. I'll share another testimonial because we have so many testimonials, and some of them are I kind of like, because I'm self-deprecating is a reasonable description of me. I like to share what I call the worst testimonial for a supplement in history, and it starts off like this. So we have this big distributor in Houston. Her name is Gwen. I've done videos with her. And she originally ordered the product for her dog. So she just had no intention of taking it. She had kind of heard of it through some circle, and she ordered it for her dog. And she noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she decided she needed to take it. What I love about that piece of the testimonial is this is a cutting edge product. Like, one of the things that you want to know is, one, do you trust the people who you're buying it from? And the other is this just all one big hand waving placebo effect? Well, when it comes to pets, there is no placebo effect, right? Ironically, the pets aren't smart enough to know they got the dropper. And so therefore they should run around and we've had customers describe, my dog has the zoomies again, right? They feel that good. They act that good. So she saw it, she noticed it, she took the product, and then I did a video with her, and she shared with me in the video, she said, if you had asked me at the 3-month mark, have I noticed anything? My initial response would have been no. But then she said, well, I evaluated my life. I'm working later. I'm like working a couple hours later at night. I'm waking up earlier. I've never been a morning person. And this is arguably the worst testimonial. I cleaned my garage. Now, we don't use that in any marketing material, but cleaning your garage means something, right? It's often a big task. Maybe that task has emotional baggage out in it. And to just have the energy to go tackle that big project actually speaks to the energy, the focus and energy that she's getting from the product. So, and I want to share something else. I don't know if I shared this with you at A4M. We bumped into each other at the Longevity Fest. We had a doctor come up to us. We met him at the biohacking conference, Dave Astray's biohacking conference in Dallas. He came up and it was like, hey, Chris, how you doing? I'll be honest, I kind of didn't really remember the conversation we had, but and I got this on video. He shared this. He said, Chris, I've given this to so many patients. I don't care if they're male, female. I don't care if they have cancer, if they're pre-surgery, post-surgery, diabetic. Your product reduces C-reactive protein appreciably in 4 to 6 weeks. Now, C-reactive protein is a marker for that chronic inflammation. So I can't say we're addressing chronic inflammation, but at this point, we're working on a study with his group. He actually has data already, so I'm trying to get a hold of that data on reducing C-reactive protein, that inflammatory marker. So we know that there's a lot of value here. It's just kind of my job, and I've got limited time and limited money to actually figure out how do we present the best case? How do we convince, some of your audience is like, oh, this sounds really interesting, and they're going to try it, and they can go to the myvitalc.com/Y2Y. And then others like, what more data would they need to understand that this is something that they should try? And we are absolutely working on putting that together. We did do a sleep study. Sometimes I have the graph on my desk here. It was kind of a cool study. We started, Oura Ring, right? One of the better sleep trackers. I'm sure you've played with it or, thought about playing with it. It's so I ended up in contact with a Benjamin Smarr. He's an assistant professor at the University of California, San Diego, I think. And he is a consultant for Oura Ring at the time. This was pre-pandemic. I got in contact with him. We started this study, and then the pandemic just waylaid that. And really, the big reason is because the Oura Ring was pretty good at identifying COVID. And so you can imagine the press tours he had to go on. Anyway, he was super busy. But we continued that survey study. And what that survey study looked like is we collected survey data 10 days prior to people taking the product, 10 days on the product, 10 days off the product, and then 10 days back on the product again. 100% of the people went, and it's only 10 at this point. We're continuing to push more people through it. 100% of the people who filled out that study, who went through that process, reported improvements in sleep in that study when they were on the product. And so yes, we are continuing to try and drive these human trials that will give people more confidence in the product.
And the biggest thing I love is the fact that you waited to ensure that it does no harm. That's the first rule. And then finding out it has multiple helpful, useful benefits in the human body to support all of us to have a better quality life. And that's got to tie into brain function. Like you said, the enthusiasm is going to go way up. You're going to be inspired to get things done, like clean your garage, which nobody wants to do. And it feels good. It feels good to set things in order and to simplify and not to have to chase so many things. Like if you don't remove that ROS problem and get that C-reactive protein down, you're going to have to do a whole lot of other things that are very expensive, time, energy, effort, and money to deal with it. This is going to get rid of the problem itself and complement so many other things that we're doing. When you're taking something like NAD that is energizing the mitochondrial engine, now the mitochondrial engine is going to be already upgraded. So you're going to have a better mitochondrial flow with the ESS60. And now these other things are going to come in and work that much better. So, we're on the cusp of doing something very significant by combining all these master keys and getting these into these healing centers, rehab centers, getting people out of these addictive things that are staying in their body, They go in and they go through the rehab, then they get back on the drug because they don't feel well. And when you feel great, you don't need any of those things. All those things melt away. And now you're living your real life. And I think it's going to get people to be more tuned into their mission. Why are you on the earth? You're here for a reason. You didn't just randomly show up. And you know you're here to serve people by making their lives better. And your gift that you have, whatever that gift is to improve the quality of life of people around you, which stimulates all economies. So getting these things empowering you, getting the energy from it, getting the clarity, to me is again, what I call a master key. So I'm very thankful, Chris, for your work that you've done. We're going to have a lot of conversations in the future. I want to definitely provide the education for people so they can convince themselves by actual application. Convince themselves enough to say, hey, you know what? I got to get this one in my system. Let's see what happens. And then the more they see it, the more that they know that this is something you're going to add into your life. Maybe you don't have to do it every day, but you're going to do it consistently into the future. And if a person were to start this right now, do you say like a 90-day sprint or 30 days, or what should they do to really get the feel for this initially?
Yeah, so we have testimonials as quick as the same day. And that was literally a lady sent me a video and she's like, I did not finish my cup of coffee today, right? Which is, if you're a coffee drinker and you noticed that you didn't finish your coffee, then that's a big deal. And then we've got the example of Gwen, who's like 3 months out. If you're, if you, let's just pretend that it's just sleep, right? Sleep, you get 1 hour extra, 1 hour less sleep through a week if you're a busy person. And so if you wake up one day and you started taking My Vital C and you're getting this extra hour or a little bit deeper sleep, not even an extra hour, but a deeper sleep, you kind of don't notice that, right? And so we have a number of, it's probably like in the 10% range where they'll actually say, hey, I haven't noticed anything. They'll drop off of the product and then they're like, oh, now I notice what I'm missing, and then they get back, kind of like my business coach. And then you go back to that one doctor who visited us at A4M. He says you dramatically drop C-reactive protein in 4 to 6 weeks. And I want to share one thing he shared with us. I put this on every employee's desk because it's that important. And we have another quote from a guy who owns the OsteoStrong franchise, which is for building bone density, kind of amazing technology there. And he said, I will never stop taking this product because he actually had a really debilitated pup, and the product fixed his pup like in, again, 4 to 6 weeks. So I think the 4 to 6 week range would be appropriate.
All right. Okay. And budget-wise, what should a person consider for a budget on investing in themselves? Because these things are not expensive. As soon as we use the word expensive, we're not getting it. Then we're realizing we're not investing. We think it's a thing that's going to be an expense. This is truly an investment. So how much is a person going to invest on a monthly basis to have the minimum amount that's going to make the difference?
Yeah, it's about $100 a month.
Okay. So about $3 a day, somewhere in there.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yeah, very good. Super affordable because it's going to save them so much otherwise. They're going to get more value out of the food they eat. They're going to get more value out of the energy, the time they're spending. It is an exponential curve whenever you're improving something, even 1%, let alone 10 or 50% or 70%. If you were to say a person would recognize a percentage improvement of all the other things they're doing, whether it's working out, getting more of their food, getting better brain power, what is the percent increase that they're going to see generally?
I'd love to say like 50%, but then, people wouldn't get to the 3-month mark and not really and say they haven't noticed. I would say in the 5%. And then, so we have a 2-time U.S. ultra running champion. His name is Anthony Kunkel. He was at the booth. I might have introduced you to him, who absolutely loves our product. And I remember our first conversation. he shared with me, hey, Chris, I was taking one serving of your product. And by the way, this is he's currently running 120 miles a week. He won a U.S. championship at 50 miles and at 100K, which is 62 miles. So pushing the body to the limit, that's what he does. And he shared with me, I started taking one serving of your product, didn't really notice anything. And then I tripled the serving, and his response was like, wow. This could be the difference between having a running hobby and a running career. But that difference can be like 5%. Like if you can be 5% better, you actually pop into the professional ranks as opposed to being just a hobbyist. And so I would say the fair number is 5%.
Yeah, which is very reasonable. And it's like when people have already maxed out what they thought the best they could get, and you add 5% of that, you're talking a significant upgrade. And on the professional level, when you have somebody in a human performance career and they see an uptick, they pay attention very, very close. And I think it's just a matter of all of us, regardless of whether we're high performers in the physical world or not, we all want to be high performance in every category, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, environmentally, and domestically with our family interactions. So getting the family upgraded is a big deal. When you surround yourself with people who are in that higher vibe, you're going to definitely be raising your own vibration up. And this is all vibrational very much because it's informational. You're literally consuming data that is going to go in and communicate with your body in a very big upgrade. It's like upgrading your whole operating system. So this is super cool. I love the high-tech stuff. I like the fact that it's ultra safe and that it brings these benefits that are measurable, and you've done tons of work on this end of it. There's lots of more work going to come into the future. It'd be great to, get into some double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized studies, because with your product, they can't tell if it's the real thing or not. And there's ways of doing, giving them the placebo and then giving a group the real, and then monitoring that and seeing where it goes to eliminate that placebo effect. Because if you don't have that raw material in your system, it's simply not going to work. And when you do, it will. So thank you so much, Chris. This has been extremely informative. It's exactly the information I was looking for. I'm really happy you've done all your homework and you're at this high level of education. And also an example of who you are. What year were you born?
In 1969.
So that places you at 55, right?
55 years old. Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So you're coming in around 25 to 30 right now in your appearance, which is highly unusual because at your age, you should look like a normal 55-year-old. I look like a 67-year-old. I turned 67 in June. But internally, I look like a youthful person in my 20s. And that's really the goal of the biological.
I think you look pretty youthful also, right? I mean, you certainly have this distinct persona, which I love, right? With the gray beard. And so that's going to kind of age you. But if you look at your face, you look much younger.
Yeah. And I feel better than I did when I was 21, just by adding all these master keys in. So I'll share some of these other master keys with you as we have time and with the audience. Really, that's what the Younger Than Yesterday is all about. Bringing in the master keys, getting you engaged with them, where you do your own determination. You become a judge of what is true and what is not true. And then you find out that that's validated in the physical world when you consume these things and do these different protocols. So I will definitely share the link in the show notes below, and we'll get you engaged so you can save some money on this and just improve your health dramatically in a way that I'm just really excited to hear back from all of you. Once you engage with this, we want to hear as much feedback as we can, and you become a part of a community that's bringing the energy into that equation that you're receiving. So it's not like giving back. You're just adding in the energy that you're getting from this. And then we can energize a lot of people in the world to improve this place dramatically. And this is the time of this age that is everything's kicking into gear and is needed more than ever before. So thank you again, Chris, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
If I could add one last thing, right? So they'll go to myvitalc.com/YTY. We've got olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil. We recommend the olive oil really for two reasons. We're a science-based organization. All the research is in olive oil. Also, you get a higher concentration of the ESS60 molecule in the olive oil. So that's the one you want to take. There's a 25% discount for going on subscription. So go ahead and take advantage. Even if you just want to try it, maybe 1 or 2 months, go ahead and go on subscription. Take advantage of that discount. You can cancel it at any time. Very proud. Our customer service team has 950 plus 5-star reviews, probably over 1,000 now. 5-star reviews. They're not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. Also, you can get my book, Live Longer and Better, on Amazon and on our website. On our website, you can pay an additional $10 and I'll sign the book for you. All of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. So you may remember the movie The Sound of Freedom about child sex trafficking. So Operation Underground Railroad, I happened to see him speak before the movie came out. The movie is absolutely amazing and tough to watch, right, given what's going on. So the entire signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
Really cool. Love that. Okay, well, that caps it off. That's fabulous. It was like the icing on the cake there, Chris. And so, yeah, and we'll get another interview going in the near future and look forward to being on your podcast as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.